Go is a very ancient game. It's probably the most complex game humans play. There's more configurations of the board than there are atoms in the universe.
In the game of Go, we need this amazingly complex, intuitive machinery, which people previously thought was only possible within the human brain, to even have an idea of who's ahead and what the right move is that we should play there.
So our program combines lots of different techniques together, and for the first time ever, AlphaGo, our program, beat a professional player at Go on even stones, so no handicap, on a full-sized Go board. So I played chess from very young, and that was my first game that I fell in love with. But then when I got to Cambridge and doing my undergrad there was a very strong Go club at Cambridge with very active players, lots of mathematicians. It seems to appeal to mathematicians, the game.
Demis was a very, very strong game player. He's a child prodigy and one of the strongest chess players in the world. And it was very important to some people in the company that we could actually beat Demis at something, and I decided that the game of Go was my only chance because Demis didn't really know the game at that time.
From then on I fell in love with the game, and since then I've always thought it would be a great challenge for computers to be able to play such an aesthetic game, an intuitive game like Go. A much greater challenge than it was to play chess.
Go is a game for two players. It's a game of perfect information, so there's no luck, there's no hidden moves or anything. And the game is played by black and white, take it in turns to place moves. They place moves on the board, but the stones, once placed, do not move. But a stone can be captured. And stones are captured by completely surrounding them. White is now threatening to capture a black stone by playing here and completely surrounding it. And the ultimate objective is to control more than 50% of the board.
If you look at the board, there are hundreds of different places that this stone can be placed down, and hundreds of different ways that white can respond to each one of those moves. Hundreds of ways that black can respond in turn to white's moves, and you get this enormous search tree with hundreds times hundreds of possibilities. And in fact, the search space of Go is too enormous and too vast for brute force approaches to have any chance of succeeding. And as a result, AI researchers have to turn to more interesting approaches than brute force search, which are perhaps more human-like in the way that they deal with the position.
It's a very intuitive game, so if you ask a great Go player how it is that they decided on a move, they'll often tell you it felt right. So these things are generally computers are not great at.
The key to AlphaGo is the deep neural networks that we use under the hood. So in fact, in AlphaGo, there are two different neural networks. The first neural network is something we call the Policy Network. We also have a second neural network, which we call the Value Network. And the way that AlphaGo uses them is to reduce the enormous complexity of the search tree down to something more manageable. So instead of having to consider hundreds of different moves at each step of the search, it just considers maybe a handful of promising moves that are suggested by this policy network. The value network we use to reduce the depth of the search. So instead of having this enormously deep search that has to go all the way down to perhaps 300 moves all the way to the end of a game, what we do is we search to some modest depth of perhaps 20 moves, and then we evaluate that position without playing all the way to the end of the game to say who is going to win in that position. The search process itself is not based on brute force, it's based on something more akin to imagination.
We evaluate our programs internally against themselves, and we have an estimate of how strong they are, but we don't know for sure until we test it against a top human professional. And so it was very exciting when we invited Fan Hui to come in, the current European champion, to come and play AlphaGo. We weren't sure who was going to win.
To be quite honest, I expected AlphaGo to, it to lose. Albeit not by much. I was therefore very interested and slightly surprised, I will admit, when AlphaGo did as well as it did, and all credit to it.
In the end, AlphaGo won 5-0, and it was stronger than perhaps we were expecting.
So we've beaten Fan Hui, the European champion. Now we have to go and demonstrate that we can beat the world's top players, not just the European top player. So we're actually going to be playing a match in March against Lee Sedol, who is the greatest player of modern times. He's won more championships than any other player in the last decade. And he has accepted a challenge to play AlphaGo. And we're quietly confident, but again, who knows what will happen.
I would put my money probably on the human, but I wouldn't put lots of money on the human.
Humans have weaknesses. They get tired when they play a very long match. They can play mistakes. They are not able to make the precise tree-based computation that a computer can actually perform. And perhaps even more importantly, humans have a limitation in terms of the number of actual Go games that they're able to process in a lifetime. A human perhaps can play 1,000 games a year. AlphaGo can play through millions of games every single day. It's at least conceivable that as a result, AlphaGo could, given enough processing, given enough training, given enough search power, reach a level that's beyond any human.
Most games are fun and were designed because they're microcosms of some aspect of life, and they're maybe slightly constrained or simplified in some way, but that makes them the sort of perfect challenge for us as a stepping stone towards building general artificial intelligence.
We're very excited about what the future holds, both in terms of Google applications. You can imagine within Google actually taking our interactions with our many users at Google to try and optimize how we interact with them. In addition, we'd like to consider tasks beyond that, perhaps moving into medicine one day, where we'll be able to help patients personalize their treatment by actually using reinforcement learning to understand which sequences of treatments actually lead to the best outcomes for those individual patients based on their particular track record and history.
Have you played AlphaGo?
In the early days of AlphaGo, I played against it, but it was quickly apparent that AlphaGo was way beyond my skill level.
I've not played AlphaGo myself. I'm not strong enough, but I've played through many of the games.
I did play a match against AlphaGo when I was first introduced to the game.
And did you win?
No.
Games are kind of microcosm of the outside world. That's why games were invented. That's why humans find it fun to play. There's a rich history of computers tackling board games. It started with games like backgammon, drafts, and then finally there was Deep Blue in '97 that beat Kasparov at chess, which was obviously a huge watershed moment for game AI. Since then, the really big remaining sort of holy grail, if you like, has been Go. In chess, the number of possible moves is about 20 for the average position. In Go, it's about 200. Another way of viewing the complexity of Go is that the number of possible configurations of the board is more than the number of atoms in the universe. If you ask a great Go player why they played a particular move, sometimes they'll just tell you it felt right. So the one way you can think of it is that Go is a much more intuitive game, whereas chess is a much more logic-based game. AlphaGo is our program to actually try and crack Go. We played the European champion Fan Hui in a 5-game match. We have an estimate of how strong a program is, but of course you never know. When you play a human player, they do all sorts of very interesting creative things that your programs don't necessarily do. So there's always an unknown.
When we play the first game, I lose. Interesting.
I think he was a bit stunned after the first game, and I think he was unsure as to whether he hadn't prepared enough or whether the program was really strong.
I think after first game, maybe he don't like fight. He like play slowly. So it's why begin the second game, I fight. Do mistakes sometimes. It's give me confidence. I think maybe I'm right. It's why for another game I fight all the time. This. Now it's complicated. But I lose all my game.
AlphaGo won 5-0, which is the first time ever a program has beaten a professional player. The way I see where we are now is that we've beaten the European champion now, and the next step for us is to try and challenge the legendary player Lee Sedol, who you can think of as the Roger Federer of Go. We always used to talk about, well, if we could eventually crack Go and have a program that could beat the world champion, then we must have invented some generic, general-purpose algorithm. So maybe we're on the cusp of all of that. And we're very excited about it, but it is just one rung on the ladder towards solving artificial intelligence.